Hi, my name's Phil. I'd like to talk about politics in this video as we prepare for the spring budget statement from Rachel Reeves, where even more cuts to her spending plans are expected. I'd like to discuss the reason why economists say there is little point in the Treasury continuing to swim upstream because Trump's reordering of the world is likely to make a nonsense of what she says this afternoon as early as next week. The question is this a relatively short-term political and economic hurricane which passes when Trump's term ends, as his former security advisor John Bolton thinks, or is it more long-term? And if it's more long-term, Reeves is going to have to change to plan B at some point. But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So Rachel Reeves is getting ready to make her spring statements. The aim is to announce something which lets the OBR confirm that the books remain balanced and debt is still due to fall as a share of GDP in 5 years. Now, of course, you'd think I should really wait until the statement before I do a video on it, shouldn't I? But although I could be wrong, I actually don't think there's any point. There's a sense in which I don't think it matters what Reeves says this afternoon, for a couple of reasons. First, as I say, she's just setting out how she gets the OBR to give her budget the green light in order to avoid investors in the gilt market getting cold feet and doing a Liz Truss. Whatever she announces, she doesn't necessarily go through with. So what does it matter what she announces? But also, next week, Trump is expected to announce wide-ranging tariffs, which will include the UK. Ministers have been hinting that we might cancel the digital services tax in order for preferential treatment on tariffs. I discussed this before. It has a lot of people, of course, understandably complaining that we shouldn't be cutting taxes for wealthy American corporations, which is what it would amount to, who already pay very little tax, when we're cutting support for people with disabilities. And in those terms, absolutely not. But the reality of the situation is that this tax brings in very little, and if in return we dodge much more in tariffs, then we actually protect jobs and avoid the need for even deeper cuts. It's yet another lesson in how powerless we are to stand up to Trump. Other countries affected, they're going to suffer as well, of course, but you notice that countries in the EU as well as Canada are talking a tough game against Trump. Even Greenland is biting back a bit. But here in the UK, with our economy ravaged by 14 years of no government investment at all, having to wait before the renewed investment yields its benefits, and weakened by the isolation of Brexit, we are very vulnerable. Rachel Reeves was criticised last October for leaving very little headroom in her budget. I chose to be optimistic and say, well, it shows that she was trying to squeeze as much public spending as she could from the situation. At the time, although polls were close, we did not know who was going to win the US presidency. Had Harris won, actually, her budget would still be intact. But days after the budget announcement, Trump won, and ever since his inauguration, he has been destabilising America's allies and empowering its enemies. The headroom was wiped out. Now we're making economic decisions which are going to strangle what was already fragile growth. But economists are also making the point that although Reeves is doing this to give investors confidence, it's not really working. The thing is that the cuts Reeves is announcing aren't immediate. They're all for later in the Parliament. Many people are saying that investors don't really believe Labour will go ahead with the cuts. Now, I bloody well hope they're right. That is not to give false hope, by the way, to those affected. If cuts are announced, the only way they get cancelled is if the economy grows faster than is currently being forecast. Now, this is possible. Indeed, Reeves is openly saying that that's what she expects. But Trump's behaviour does not give me as much confidence as I had. In fact, I fear that the impact of Trump is very like the impact of Brexit. A lot of people think Brexit sort of happened and then that was it and we just had to adapt after that. That is not the case. We left the EU in 2020, not really much change other than we lost influence. Then we left the Single Market and Customs Union at the end of 2020. Well, that had an immediate impact. But because we were phasing in aspects of that decision over time, new Brexit trade barriers have been emerging all the time since. It's not like we had it all at the start of 2021 and we've just had to now adapt. We keep getting new ones. So Brexit wasn't this big hit which all happened at once, which we could then look at adapting to afterwards. New Brexit problems keep emerging all the time. We had 2 just last week. And I worry the same will happen with Trump. Next week, he's going to announce a new tariff regime. It will likely make a complete nonsense out of Reeves's budget statement this afternoon, unless, of course, she leaves herself loads of headroom this time. But that will mean announcing even more cuts than are necessary to balance the books. But whatever Trump announces over the next week won't be the end of the matter. There are a couple of factors which suggest to me that Trump will never stop moving the goalposts. The first is that Trump's economic policies will not result in his economic aims. He really doesn't have a clue what he's doing. And this time he's surrounded himself with yes men who will not say, well, actually, that's because you did that. That was a bit stupid. Should we try something else? So there are no guardrails in place. So because he won't get the results he wants, he will keep tinkering. And that will probably take the form of doubling down. Second, Trump is the head of a criminal cartel. He will always look to extort where he thinks it can do him some good. And I think Putin will constantly be egging him on to keep going back for more, regardless of the results. Reeves seems to be behaving as if she just needs to shore things up for a little bit longer. Then it's plain sailing after another year or so. And maybe this will work out. We certainly Labour are doing things which the OBR are not taking account of in their forecasts. Yeah. But Trump's actions are creating a radically different world order. And I think we'd be better off preparing for it rather than desperately trying to cling on to the hope that this is temporary. John Bolton, Trump's security advisor when he first became president, he has been arguing that Europe is overreacting and risking the Western alliance. Now, he's not saying this to stick up for Trump or to deflect blame away. He has been vocally critical of Trump in his second presidency. Bolton appears to genuinely believe that the problems we're having with the USA now are actually problems with Trump alone, and that those problems go away at the end of Trump's term. Now, this is possible, but I have a few thoughts on it. First, Trump is rapidly dissolving the threads holding democracy together. He's 2 months into a 4-year presidency, and he's already not only breaking the US Constitution, but being allowed to get away with it. Congress are allowing him to do what he wants at the moment, at any rate, and even judges who oppose him, he is just ignoring them. I am not confident that even the midterms will be remotely free and fair elections, much less the next presidential election, because you look at what he's done in 2 months and you think, what's he going to have done in 2 years? The second is that even if Trump steps down at the end of his term, if he retains Godfather-like control over the Republican Party, then he will be confident that what follows is a puppet government which he still rules. It's like when Putin had to step down after his second term as president. He installed a puppet president while the constitution was changed to allow him to return and remain as president for as long as he liked. Trump may have plans to do likewise. Third, Bolton's view is not shared by others. There was a BBC in-depth report quoting one expert as saying that Trumpism will outlast the presidency. Now, we cannot know what the future holds. Maybe America will fight back and win. But the likelihood is that Trumpism does control America for the long term now. So I think Reeves and Starmer are making a mistake in thinking they can just tweak a few more things, then coexist with Trump. Donald Trump is openly pursuing close political and economic ties with Russia and equally openly hostile relations with America's allies in Europe and North America at least. And investors will be looking at the geopolitical situation as well. I've seen it reported of economists that the cuts don't work to win them over because they don't believe that cuts slated for 2 or 3 years' time will actually happen, but they do believe in tax rises which will happen next week. In fact, some economists think that Reeves is going to have to raise taxes. Although Labour keeps saying you can't borrow or tax your way to growth, that is just to mirror what much of the public believe. The reality is different. You cannot cut your way to growth. In fact, whether you are a small business or a country, if you want to grow financially, first step, you have to invest. Reeves knows this. Her October budget produced the biggest investment to public services in a generation. It's important to note as well that unless she announces something mad this afternoon, that investment is still there. That investment has not been cut. The money is still pouring into the NHS, housing, energy, transport. But the cuts, even if they are not happening for a couple of years, and even if she doesn't intend to make them at all because she is confident the economy is going to grow beyond expectations, they still don't inspire confidence in anyone. What we need Reeves and Starmer to do is what other Western leaders are doing. Canada and various European leaders have set out how they are going to radically change the way they're going to do things, specifically in order to reflect the reality that Trump's America is shifting its alliances. What's missing is the UK government setting out its own plan to do that. It may have one, I expect it does, behind closed doors, but other governments are sharing those plans with their own people. If we have such a plan, it's not being communicated to us. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.